great new features we've added to Enso in the past month. To start, I'd like to highlight some of our new capabilities around connecting to and querying from Snowflake databases. First, I can set up my credentials. By using our username and password method, I can enter in my username in plain text since it's not secured, and for my password, I can use a secret value stored inside of the Enso cloud. This allows the password to remain secure while also making sure that it can be used dynamically for our connections. Next, we can connect to the database with database.connect. We can choose from our list of dropdowns of supported databases the Snowflake option. And then for the account, we'll pass in our account name. I can then directly connect this credentials object into this in order to successfully connect. Our database and schema we'll define a bit later, so we can get rid of those for now. Now, I can add a new component to this, and I can use it in order to set our database as a second action. Here we can see in this dropdown all of the databases that are available dynamically on the fly. For this particular example, I want to use the Tasty Bites sample data. Next, we're going to define our query, and we're going to query new retail data. We can take a look at this and swap it over to a table view. And in just a moment, we'll see all of our data, which we can expand in order to take a look at what we've got here. For this particular example, I'd like to look for cases where there is a price less than 5, and then I want to get a count by country for each of these. So we can easily add in a filter component, and we can filter by our price column, set it to less than a number value of 5. And next we can use our aggregate method in order to let us group by those countries and get a count. Again, if we look at our table view, we can see by country how many different items exist in this data set that cost less than 5. Now let's talk about our new support for connecting to and querying from Google Analytics. We have a blog out that goes into this in more detail, which will be linked in the description below. But for now, let's go over a quick demonstration. We can start by reading in our credentials via Google credential from file. We can browse out and select our file, which will again keep our credentials secured while allowing us to use them in order to query the information we need. Next, we can add a new component and use Google Analytics.read. I've already included my property ID inside of this workflow, so we can automatically connect that in. And we can also connect our credentials in. Next, we can specify our dimensions and our metrics. We support every single dimension and metric that Google Analytics has to offer, so feel free to play around with this and give it a try and see what you can do with it. We can now take a look at the previewed data, and you'll see our data has been queried live for us so that we can use it for our downstream. To highlight some of our new features that make it easier to read in files into Enso, make it easier to work specifically with Excel files, and to select columns, especially when you have a lot of different columns that you want to select. To start, we're going to use our data.read method, and we can select a file via this file browse option. Here I'll pick my overhead costs Excel file, and if I click on the format dropdown, you can see that in addition to Excel workbook, we now have Excel sheet and Excel range. I can pick Excel sheet and enter a sheet name, and my data is available immediately for downstream consumption. To add a new component onto the canvas, I can now click this plus icon, which will automatically connect it to my prior node and make it a lot easier for me to work through creating new nodes and following a chain of logic. Here I'll use select columns, and I can specify in this dropdown a column, but I can do more than that. I can actually now also select multiple different columns, and they'll all be added to the list dynamically. This will even preserve the order for you. So for example, because I selected school name last, it's the last column in the selection. But if I change that, I can now have it so that month is last. Lastly, while we're here, I'd like to highlight another really cool feature that's going to make it a lot easier to document your workflows. We've added a new comment feature, and I can access it via this radial menu, and I can type in whatever I want in order to help specify this and make it a little bit easier for myself coming back to it or someone else looking at it for the first time to understand what's going on here. Finally, I'd like to show off some of our cool new features that make it a lot easier to work with JSON and get the data you need out of your files. To start, we can again use data.read and browse out and choose a file. Here I'll choose this users 100 file. And we can view a preview of this, which will show us the table, but we can also look at the JSON view of it. Here, we can very easily look for information and pick an element that we want more details on. In this example, I'll pick friends. Enso will automatically add a new node, which will get all of the information out of the friends nodes in JSON. Now, if I wanted to get a little bit more information, for example, I want to look at these hobbies specifically for Charlotte, I can again look at the JSON view and click on hobbies. And again, we've got a new node added that will isolate this data for us. This makes it a lot easier to work with, especially if you're not super comfortable querying information out of JSON formats, and it should be a lot more intuitive for you in this